The lab office was sterile and quiet. Eric Reeves sat calmly, his gray cardigan unzipped, as Rebecca handed him the first envelope.
This is the paternity test result for your son, Mr. Reeves. It confirms a 0% match.
I expected as much. Thank you for confirming it.
Rebecca's fingers hesitated. Then she slid a second envelope across the desk, her expression uneasy.
Sir, there's something else. We ran a redundant marker check on your own sample.
Eric's hand stopped halfway. He looked at the envelope, then at her.
Your DNA on file from the 2019 cardiology workup doesn't match the sample you gave us last week.
For 30 seconds, the room was completely silent. His mind refused to process the words. That's not possible. I am Eric Reeves. That's my record.
But Rebecca's face said otherwise. The man in the gray cardigan had just become a stranger to himself. 3 weeks before the lab, Eric's suspicion had already reached a breaking point.
I am not having this conversation again. You have no right to question Mom's past.
I've heard the whispers for years. You don't look like me. And that's not going away just because you want it to.
The words hung in the air, sharper than either intended.
Maybe I don't want to be like you. Cold judgments that push everyone away.
Cold silence. That was his father's weapon too. But was the resemblance only learned, or was it genetic?
After Justin stormed out, Eric stood in the boy's room, staring at the hairbrush on the dresser.
One strand. That's all it would take to end the uncertainty.
Within the hour, a DNA test kit was ordered. The box arrived in unmarked packaging. At the mailbox, his hand hesitated only a moment before letting the envelope drop. The die was cast. The next week crawled by. Eric marked each day on the kitchen calendar, waiting for the lab to call.
Is Justin coming home for dinner? He's been avoiding us all week. She twisted her wedding ring again. That habit meant guilt and a secret.
Justin barely touched his food. He excused himself early, claiming a headache.
The silence in the house was louder than any argument. Something was about to break.
The call came on a Thursday afternoon. GenLab flashed on his phone screen.
Yes, I am Eric Reeves. Tell me when to come. Now that the moment had arrived, his legs felt like lead. The truth was waiting.
He drove through a light rain, the lab's address already programmed into his phone, the GenLab sign reflected in his windshield. Eric took a breath and stepped out into the drizzle. Eric staggered out of the lab and collapsed into his car, the envelopes crumpled in his hand.
He sat in the silence for 10 minutes, unable to start the engine. Justin isn't mine, and neither am I.
When he finally drove home, the rain had stopped, but the world felt washed out. From the kitchen, Susan's voice called about dinner. He muttered something and passed straight through.
I nodded, but my mouth was too dry to form words. I needed to be alone.
He went straight to the safe and pulled out the adoption file he hadn't touched in decades.
Everything I believed about my past was just paper, and paper can lie.
He began to read, searching for the first time with new eyes.
The Andersons raised me, but they never told me the whole truth. That was already clear.
The county records office sent back a thin envelope. Most pages were blacked out with heavy redaction marks.
Someone went to great lengths to bury my birth history. Every avenue was blocked.
A week of calls led nowhere. The clerks recited policy like a prayer.
The state archive clerk whispered, sealed by court order, and wouldn't meet my eyes.
Then Rebecca called, asking to meet at a quiet coffee shop. She had something to show him.
Mr. Reeves, there's a private genealogy database. It recently digitized old hospital maternity records.
She opened her laptop and navigated to a private genealogy portal, her fingers moving with practiced speed. They cross-referenced his birth date and the name Anderson. A single entry appeared, a birth record for a baby boy.
The listed mother was a name he didn't recognize, and the father's name wasn't Henry Anderson.
The database flagged a connection to an estate search, a missing heir for a fortune. Eric's breath caught.
Arthur Cabot. A name from the society pages his father used to skim, and then quickly discard.
Cabot died in 1982. His estate has been searching for a missing heir ever since. The timeline matches your birth.
She pulled up the industrialist's biography. His foundries had once employed hundreds in Hartford.
Henry Anderson was a foreman at Cabot Foundry. He must have known the secret they kept from me.
Eric remembered his adoptive father's face whenever he asked about his birth parents. A tight, guilty look.
All those years he knew, and he chose to say nothing.
Rebecca tapped the screen, pulling up a digitized newspaper article. The headline read, "Cabot heir still missing, $38 million awaits."
38 million. But the number meant nothing compared to the lie.
He stared at the clipping, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. Then he folded it, placed it in his pocket, and caught his own reflection in the window, gray cardigan unchanged. Eric called the number on the clipping the next morning. A brisk voice answered, "Harrington and Associates."
My name is Eric Reeves. I believe I may be Arthur Cabot's son.
The lawyer paused. Then, a careful reply came through the line.
Mr. Reeves, we've heard claims before. What evidence can you provide?
I have DNA results that raise questions, and a birth record that doesn't match my adoptive parents.
Harrington's tone shifted. He described a confidential file. Cabot had a child out of wedlock, a boy given to a trusted worker.
Henry Anderson. The trusted worker was my adoptive father. He took me and buried my real identity.
If what you say is true, the estate would require a DNA comparison. Are you willing to submit to that?
I am. Send the kit. I'll give whatever sample you need.
Eric hung up, the silence of the room pressing in. He had just set in motion something irreversible. That evening, Eric found Susan in the living room. He placed the DNA envelope on the coffee table between them.
Susan, we need to discuss Justin. I had a paternity test done. He isn't mine.
What? That's impossible. There must be a mistake.
I've seen the lab report. It's 0%. I'm not here to argue the science.
Susan's face collapsed. She looked at the envelope, then away, her wedding ring suddenly heavy.
It was Charles. It was only once. After you and I had that terrible fight. I never meant.
Charles, his late business partner. The betrayal was deeper than he had imagined.
Justin is Charles's son. I am sorry, Eric. I've lived with this guilt every day.
A strange calm settled over him. The suspicion was now fact, and the worst was known.
He didn't shout. He didn't weep. He simply nodded. His gray cardigan still neat, his voice barely a whisper.
Dad, is it true? I heard everything. I am not your son?
Eric felt a knife twist in his chest. Justin stood in the doorway, his face white.
Listen to me. You are the only son I have. That won't ever change.
But Mom, she lied to us both. I don't know who I am anymore.
You are the man I raised. Nothing else matters. We'll figure this out together.
Eric turned to Susan, his voice dropping into something colder than he'd ever allowed.
You'll be removed from the will. The house stays with me. We're done.
Susan's face crumbled. She backed away, then fled upstairs. The front door slammed.
After all this, why forgive me? I am the proof of her betrayal.
Because you are not them. You are my son, and I am never letting go.
The call came early, Harrington's voice cutting through the gray morning light.
Is it a match?
The preliminary markers confirm a connection. We need you in Boston for the definitive DNA sample.
I'll book the next flight out.
Eric hung up and stood in the living room. The house felt abandoned already, Susan's exit still hanging in the air.
This trip wasn't just about proving a lineage. It was about building something honest for Justin's future.
He packed efficiently. A change of clothes, his DOP kit, and his gray cardigan, folded on top like a quiet uniform. A note on the counter for Justin read, "Gone to Boston. We'll talk when I return. Dad." He found his seat by the window, staring out at the tarmac, his thoughts already in Boston. The plane climbed, and he watched the familiar streets dissolve into a grid of memory. Ahead lay the final answer. Logan Airport gave way to brick and ivy. Eric's taxi stopped before a granite office tower.
This building held the answer to who I really am, and I'd never felt more like an imposter.
Mr. Reeves, welcome. We'll proceed directly to the DNA collection. The process is straightforward.
A technician swabbed the inside of his cheek. The sterile cotton felt heavier than it should.
A few cells on a swab would decide everything. The past, the future, even the truth about my father.
The waiting was a special kind of torment. Eric walked the common, sat in coffee shops, stared at his phone. 2 days passed. Then 3. He barely slept, his mind rehearsing both outcomes.
If the test comes back negative, I lose the only solid ground I've found in weeks.
Mr. Reeves, the results are conclusive. You share 99.999% genetic identity with Arthur Cabot. You are his son.
Eric gripped the edge of the desk. The room seemed to tilt, but he didn't let go. Harrington opened a leather folder. The estate is valued at $38 million, Mr. Reeves.
He had known the number from the clipping, but hearing it aloud made his mouth go dry. Put $30 million into an irrevocable trust for Justin's children. I want it handled today.
A trust for grandchildren you haven't met. That's remarkably generous. And the remaining balance?
Donate it. A children's hospital foundation. I don't want my name attached.
I've handled many estates. Few beneficiaries ask for total anonymity. You are certain?
The money was never mine. It belonged to a dead man's regret. I just wanted to build something solid.
Eric signed the paperwork in his neat handwriting. His gray cardigan sleeves pushed back just enough to show worn cuffs.
One more thing. No press release. I am not looking to become a headline.
Harrington nodded and extended his hand. The deal was sealed without ceremony, exactly as Eric wanted. Eric's plane touched down in Hartford late afternoon. He drove straight home and called Justin.
Justin, it's Dad. I am back from Boston. Can you come over? There's something I need to show you.
An hour later, Justin sat across the kitchen table. Eric slid a thick document toward him.
What is this? Legal papers? Are you divorcing Mom?
Number. This is for your future. I am establishing a trust for your children. $30 million.
Justin's mouth opened, but no sound came. He reached for the document, his fingers trembling.
That's impossible. How could you possibly have that kind of money? And even if you did, why for my kids?
It's a long story about my birth family, but the only part that matters, you are my son. This is for your bloodline.
I don't deserve this. After everything. Dad, I am sorry.
Stop. I still have my son. That's all I ever wanted.
A few seasons passed. Justin's backyard became the new center of Eric's world. A toddler with Justin's eyes ran barefoot on the grass, shrieking as his father chased him. Eric watched from the porch swing, a coffee mug warming his hands, the same gray cardigan draped over his shoulders.
Some inheritances are more than money. This was the thing that could never be tested in any lab.
The boy tumbled, and Justin scooped him up. The laughter carried across the yard.
I never imagined this. Not the money, not the truth, just this, a second chance.
Justin looked up, caught Eric's eye, and mouthed "thank you" across the distance.
Eric just nodded, blinking against the sun. No words were necessary. Every betrayal had led here, to a child who didn't know the word, only the love.
He stayed on the swing until the sun dropped low, the gray cardigan his only armor, and contentment his truest companion. The following afternoon, Eric walked through the park near his home. The autumn leaves a carpet of gold under his worn loafers. A jogger passed with earbuds in and didn't give him a second glance. To the world, he was just another retiree in a gray cardigan.
$38 million sat in a trust, and not a single person on this path knew.
He found his usual bench, the one facing the duck pond, and sat down slowly, hands resting on his knees. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look at any documents. There was nothing left to prove.
I kept the gray cardigan because it still fit. Not all truths require a new wardrobe.
A breeze stirred the leaves, and Eric watched a pair of ducks glide across the water, unbothered by anything. Some men are defined not by what they gain, but by what they refuse to lose. Eric Reeves rose from the bench and walked out of the park, back toward the ordinary streets. The same man in the same gray cardigan, and that was exactly how he wanted it. That evening, Eric sat at his old oak desk, the lamp casting a warm circle on a blank sheet of paper.
Henry Anderson had been dead for 12 years, but the conversation Eric needed had waited even longer.
He began to write. Dad, I know why you did it. You wanted to protect me from a family that would have fought over me like property. I understand that now. You gave me a quiet life, a simple name, and a work ethic. Those were gifts. I've made peace with the truth. I forgive you. I hope you can forgive yourself. Eric set the pen down and read the words once. They felt true.
The anger that had tightened his chest for weeks finally loosened. He could let Henry go.
He folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and placed it in the back of the desk drawer. There was no need to mail it. The dead don't read, but the living need to write. 18 miles away, Susan Reeves unlocked the door of a small one-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. She hung her coat on a single hook and set her purse on a thrifted table. The divorce had left her with nothing Eric hadn't already given her.
She worked as a receptionist now, something she hadn't done in 30 years. The pay was meager.
On the windowsill sat a single-framed photograph, her wedding day, years before the lies had calcified.
She didn't look at it often. When she did, the guilt sat on her chest like a stone.
There was no malice in Eric's absence. He simply didn't think about her anymore. He had moved forward without the burden of vengeance, and the indifference was more final than any courtroom decree.
The worst part wasn't the tiny apartment or the tired job. It was knowing Justin only called on holidays, and Eric never called at all.
She had made her choices, and now she lived inside their shape. The story didn't linger on her. It simply noted the consequence and moved on. Some betrayals end in fire. Hers ended in a quiet room where no one remembered to call. A few weeks later, Eric walked through the entrance of Hartford Children's Hospital. The lobby smelled of antiseptic and hope. He took the elevator to the new pediatric wing. The walls were painted with cheerful murals, and the sound of children's laughter drifted from the playroom.
All those zeros on a bank statement had finally turned into something real.
Near the nurse's station hung a small brass plaque. It read, "This wing was funded by an anonymous donor in honor of all children."
He stood there for a long moment. No one knew, and that was precisely the point.
A passing nurse smiled at him. "Are you here to see a patient, sir?"
Just visiting. The work you do here matters.
He slipped out quietly, the automatic doors parting to the autumn afternoon.
A man doesn't need his name on a wall to know he made a difference. The children in those rooms were enough.
He bought a coffee at a nearby cart and sat on a public bench, the gray cardigan, his only signature. That evening, Eric settled into his favorite armchair, the house around him silent save for the ticking clock. His phone buzzed on the side table with a video message from Justin. He tapped the screen. The video opened on a little girl with wild, dark curls, her smile missing a front tooth, clutching a floppy rabbit. "Thank you, Grandpa. I love you to the moon," she chirped, hugging her rabbit. Justin's voice off-screen prompted, "What else, sweetheart?" She giggled and hid behind the rabbit, then peeked out. "You are the best grandpa ever," she whispered. Eric's throat tightened. He pressed the phone to his forehead, eyes squeezed shut.
This was the reward for every sleepless night, every face he had confronted.
He replayed the video 3 times, the living room blurring into a warm wash of golden light. When he finally set the phone down, tears glistened on his cheeks.
He was richer than any bank statement could show.
A few weeks later, Eric stopped at a coffee shop downtown and saw a familiar face at a corner table. Rebecca was nursing a latte, her laptop open. She looked up and smiled as he approached.
Mr. Reeves, it's good to see you. How have you been?
Better than I ever expected. I owe you more than you know.
She closed her laptop and gestured for him to sit. They talked about ordinary things for a few minutes.
The genealogy database you showed me. It led to my birth father. I found my family's story.
I wondered if you'd pursue it. I'm so happy it brought you some peace.
Eric nodded. His gray cardigan rumpled from the morning chill. He didn't offer details, and she didn't ask.
She never knew the full weight of what she'd done, but he knew, and that was enough.
They parted with a handshake, promises to stay in touch that both knew wouldn't be kept. But the warmth remained. Early morning light fell across the porch. Eric sat on the swing, a mug of coffee warming his hands.
The tomato plants were watered. The soil was dark and damp.
He had woken before dawn to tend them, the gray cardigan his only armor against the chill. Now, in the stillness, a robin pecked at the grass, and Eric simply watched. No one was calling. No documents waited. The world let him be.
This was the real inheritance. Quiet mornings and honest work.
The gray cardigan's sleeve had a small tear from the fence, but he didn't mend it. It fit.
True wealth wasn't what you inherited. It was what you chose to pass on.
He took a sip. The coffee was strong, and the silence was full. He stayed there until the sun climbed higher. The gray cardigan, his uniform, contentment his only goal. The porch swing creaked once, then settled. Eric didn't move. The world beyond the garden had already faded. The gray cardigan rested easily on his shoulders, a second skin he never outgrew. In the distance, the tomato plants stood heavy with green, the morning's work already done. A butterfly crossed the railing, and Eric tracked it without lifting his head. A small life, entirely uncomplicated. This cardigan had passed through labs, law offices, airports. It had witnessed betrayal, forgiveness, and immense fortune. Yet it remained nothing more than wool and memory. A quiet uniform for a man who no longer needed to prove anything. He had searched for his identity in DNA and documents, and found it in a garden, a grandchild's voice, and the same gray cardigan. The image held for a long moment, as if the world had paused to let him rest. Then the screen began to fade. The gray cardigan was the last thing to disappear, and he kept the same gray cardigan.